Welcome to Architecting Startups with Google Cloud, a series where we feature the latest and greatest startups customers and how they are architecting and deploying their production-ready workloads with GCP. My name is Fillipo Madella, and I lead one of the customer engineering teams focused on startups here on Google Cloud. Today, I have the pleasure to talk to Dan Schlosser. He's the co-founder and CTO of Ambrook, a company that is innovating in the agricultural space and has a mission to couple sustainability and profit for farmers. Thanks for your time today, Dan, and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Filippo. I really appreciate being on here, and excited to talk about how we use Google Cloud.
Perfect. So I would love to start a little bit diving into what Ambrook does, and if you can also share a little bit the story behind how everything started.
Sure thing. Ambrook builds farm accounting and spend management software. We help farmers manage their finances and grow their margins to enable them to make investments that they need to be more sustainable and profitable. That's our broader mission, making sustainability profitable. Yeah, the original idea for Ambrook was our CEO Mackenzie's. Her parents both worked at the USDA, and so she grew up with ag policy conversations at the dinner table. And when studying climate change at Stanford a few years back, she learned that there's a virtuous cycle between profitability and sustainability in many natural resource industries, and especially agriculture. In ag, better soil health, water conservation, and climate resilience often leads to lower costs, increased yields, and price premiums for crops or livestock. So to reduce the upfront cost and knowledge barriers to implement these practices, the things that are holding farmers back from becoming more sustainable and profitable, she realized that there was an overlooked part of their operation. Back office paperwork and finances were really hard on farms today. And, we think we can make this much simpler and save farms a lot of time and money. So that's really where our mission came from. We're building easy to use bookkeeping software with tools and spending cards to save producers time and money.
Sounds amazing. And I love the innovation in particular in this space. I would love to understand a little bit more, just to give a little bit more context to those watching this. What's the experience look like for a user using our platform? Like, first of all, how do they find you? And then typically, is this like consumer or a business that's going to be looking for your platform? And what's the experience when they actually log in, and what do they do? What do they see?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Many Ambrook customers find us through our funding library, which is a free resource that we publish that is the largest collection of farm grants, loans, cost share, easement programs on the internet. They can fill out a quick survey, share more about their operation, then create an account with us to get recommendations for which funding programs might be a good fit. We have provided this resource for free for over a year now, and we're inviting a small number of those producers to actually onboard to our bookkeeping and cards product that's in development right now. We have a small group of trusted testers that are building with us. They're our design partners, we call them. And we onboard these farms onto Ambrook's bookkeeping software. We connect their bank accounts, any finance software they use, and their point of sale system like Square to remove the need for any double entry. Once they're all set up, they get to use Ambrook, which means much simpler bookkeeping. All their transactions from their cards or bank accounts that they have linked show up in Ambrook. They can tag transactions not just with the categories that they need to file taxes or perform annual reports, but also with the commodities or business lines that they need to understand their business. They can itemize transactions, take photos of a receipt, and we'll actually parse out all the details so they don't have to write them all down. If they went to the store and bought 40 different things, we can just parse that out automatically. And then with all of that data captured and well organized in Ambrook, these producers can see the breakdown of what they're spending on, be that how much am I spending on seed versus electricity versus water versus bedding, or what is the profit and loss of each of my business lines that I operate, so you can make decisions for next season.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. I when I hear, it sounds like we could break this architecture in several ways, the applications. But as we were discussing previously, it seems that you really took like a lean approach on how you architect and you approach the infrastructure behind this application. So could we go a little bit deeper now on the architecture side, like your decisions around how you would build on GCP, use cloud in general, and just go a little bit distill what's your infra or your stack application stack look like today?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we were thinking about most when we started making some of our earliest architecture decisions was how could we avoid a trade-off between moving quickly and picking the tools that were going to last a long time and really stand the test of time as our product develops. And we leaned into Google's serverless tools because we wanted to be able to move really quickly with a lean team. We also chose TypeScript and Next.js as well as React Native so that we could build our app across web, Android, and iOS while sharing types and code and UI components and not have to write them multiple times. We chose Google Cloud Run and Firestore so that we can have a really performant experience for our customers while also not feeling like we were on a sort of set of prototyping tools that it was sort of inevitable to move off of. And a year and a half later, we're still on Cloud Run and Firestore. So so far so good.
Perfect. Okay. I think to help us understand kind of the flow of your user journey, if we were like to follow like this HTTP request, or like what's the behind the scenes components and how do they communicate with each other? If you could just walk us through it, would be great.
Sure. Maybe we could start at the front. Our customers access Ambrook through our web, Android, and iOS apps, which are built in TypeScript and React Native. These applications talk to our web API, which is built in our monolithic Next.js web application, which is written in TypeScript. We deploy that web app on Google Cloud Run using Docker, and we have several services configured for production, both static and dynamic, as well as staging environments. Our load balancer sits in front to direct traffic, deciding which requests should be passed to which services and passing others onto our CDN, which is also run by Google. We spend a lot of time optimizing for performance here. Next.js allows us to serve static and dynamic content, server-side rendered and statically generated, all in one application where we get to make a decision for each page what the right experience should be. By pairing this with Cloud Run services that are shaped to handle these different kinds of traffic, we've been able to achieve great performance across a variety of different request patterns. We use Firestore for application data, Firebase Auth for authentication and authorization, and Google Cloud Storage for blob storage. Not everything we do can be done in just the 200 milliseconds we aim to have all of our HTTP requests return in, though. To manage asynchronous work, from receipt parsing to data syncing to document generation, we use Google Cloud Task Queues. We put workloads on these queues either with Cloud Functions or from the app itself. The task queues schedule requests to be sent back to our monolith, which holds all the business logic. For example, when a new transaction occurs on an Ambrook card, we'd write a new record to Firestore. That Firestore document creation triggers a Cloud function, which enqueues a post request back to our monolith to an endpoint that will send an email notification to all the relevant parties based on their notification preferences. This lets us have all of the business logic in one place and not have to deal with deploying different versions of business logic across different services or microservices. Now, there's a lot that goes into running the Ambrook product. Our team uses a suite of internal tools and dashboards, and we like to manage and monitor our app as much as possible in order to support our customers. We have internal tools built with Retool, as well as Data Studio dashboards that are powered by a combination of production databases and database exports that are imported into BigQuery.
Thanks, Dan. I love the way you're setting up your architecture. Very simple. Again, taking advantage of our serverless capacity to have just a quick life cycle of your deployment there. Now, when I see like handling transactional finance data, our mind almost defaults like to a SQL type of database. And of course, you're using Firestore, Firebase, which shows a lot of the power that it has, especially like for a startup, you innovating quickly. So, what was the decision criteria? Like, what was the rationale behind going with Firebase from the start?
Yeah, absolutely. The decision to go with Firestore over a SQL database was one to optimize for speed without sacrificing user experience. I had used the Firebase real-time database in the past, which was phenomenal for getting a project done in a weekend or something. But what we wanted was a database that would serve every request really quickly, while also letting us move quickly and adapt based on the needs of our customers changing. In a startup, the only thing that's constant is change. So we didn't want to be doing SQL migrations every week, as we added new features. Firestore has been really amazing from a performance perspective, and it's allowed us to do the kinds of complex queries that we need to power our experience. That decision is hold up, and we may introduce some SQL databases in the future, but so far, Firestore has served us well.
No, Dan, this is great. Actually, this is the purpose of these conversations is so we can see all the different use cases that we have to particular startups. And is there any other features that in Firebase that you're leveraging outside of the whole speed on the transaction, the reads and writes that you mentioned? Is there anything else that today you think it's have been a piece of innovation for your product?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, Firebase authentication has been extremely powerful. It uses JWTs that allow us to authenticate requests both on the server side and client side navigation. It made it super easy to set up Google, Facebook, and password authentication, as well as anonymous authentication. That anonymous auth has been especially useful for our free tools, because when we start asking people about their operation, we don't want to say, welcome to Ambrook, please sign up to learn more about funding programs. We want to be able to say, hey, tell us about your operation, and then if you want, you can create an account to see your recommendations. That anonymous authentication that happens right when they first visit the page allows us to ask for information just in time, rather than putting up a wall up front before we get to ask them to tell us more.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Again, once more, I think you're prioritizing the user experience, and also probably as an audience that you want to make sure that you're providing the friendliness of your platform before anything else. And so if we talk about the audience in this industry, one of the things like for GCP users, like our customers, is that we at the end of the day, we just want them to thrive in whatever industry they're choosing. The industry has evolved over the years on the technology side, but it seems that you're innovating quickly, kind of outpacing usually the industry's innovation itself. Do you think there's like the way you're approaching your technology decisions, is it helping with this, or how are you innovating so quickly on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ambrook is a company that really could only be built today. 4 years ago, there was no Plaid, no Stripe. We're building this company on top of fintech platforms that allow us to offer a amazing user experience to a vertical that has not really been built for in this way by fintech before today. We are building on top of these platforms because we don't want to be building infrastructure. We want to be helping our customers. And so building on top of Google, building on top of Stripe, building on top of Plaid has allowed us to move incredibly quickly and ship products that are actually helping farmers today, rather than spending what you might have done 5 years ago, which is spend 3 years building all the infrastructure and then start to build product.
Dan, this sounds great. I think the innovation speed has a lot to do with how you're building and the technology you're using, of course. So can we talk a little bit about your deployment process, how you're approaching, and is there any insights that you would like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. We really care about being able to deploy quickly at Ambrook. It doesn't matter how quickly you write the code if you're constantly having to fix breakages in production or run tests manually to make sure that your latest change isn't going to break things for customers. So we set up a testing and automation suite that runs on every pull request. We use Google Cloud Build and deploy each pull request in GitHub using GitHub Actions to a unique subdomain of our Google Cloud Run staging environment. So each change, you can confidently just click the link and go see what the change would look like if it were deployed. We also build our React Native application and have a QR code where you can pull up your phone, scan that revision, and any person that's reviewing a pull request can click a link and see the web experience, scan the QR code and see the native experience, and also see that all the tests are green. So when those pull requests are merged, we build the app, run tests, and automatically deploy that to Google Cloud Run without having to worry about any manual deploying process. This is something we invested in early. In my experience, if once you get in the heat of building product, it can be hard to prioritize infrastructure. So we did that first, and it has absolutely paid off. We deploy our web application multiple times per day and our Android and iOS apps every day. And that's something we're really proud of.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Once you have your first version of beta or a production ready application, you hardly find the time or even the rationale to go back and change your CI/CD process. Or it takes a lot of work. So I'm glad that you sharing that, starting that early makes a lot of difference. And I'm sure you faced a lot of challenges on the way. Anything in particular you would like to highlight so we can share that it's not all about roses, but we have some thorns as well along the way?
Definitely. We definitely hit our share of challenges. I would say that most of them were around working with Next.js, which, especially when we were getting started, was a relatively new JavaScript framework and had a fairly small community of developers that were deploying it to Google Cloud. Our original application used App Engine. That was the first thing that I thought of to deploy Next.js. Because it was super easy to set up. We had it up in like an hour. But one of Next.js's most exciting features is incremental static regeneration that allows us to statically generate content at build time, and then when updates happen, have them regenerate without having to redeploy. The thing is, if you're regenerating static content, you need to be able to write it to disk, and App Engine doesn't do that. So we had an issue where we were, scratching our heads and saying, well, why isn't this content updating? And it actually had led to a 404 because we had moved something from one page to another page. And we were like, why are these 404s happening? And then we realized that it's a read-only file system. So to fix that issue, we moved our application to Google Cloud Run. There was thankfully a pretty simple tool to auto-generate the config for Cloud Run from an App Engine app. And we were redeployed in a few hours, and we've been on that happily ever since. But it was a little scary in the moment to be like, wait a minute, we have to change our server deploying platform. Like that's going to take forever. But it ended up being simpler than we had originally thought.
So looking to the future, Dan, what are any technical enhancements or anything that is on your roadmap planned for the future?
Yeah, two big ones come to mind. The first is task queues. As I mentioned, we have we use Google Cloud Tasks for our asynchronous work, but today we use a single queue for all of our different kinds of asynchronous tasks. In the future, we think we will probably want to have a different queue for each task type so that we can tune them for the correct sort of QPS expectations, retry behavior, and things like that. We also are operating on a single production and then staging environment in Google Cloud Run, but our core app doesn't understand the difference between these two environments, and our database isn't set up separately for different environments, which is something that we know we're going to have to do. That will probably involve creating a new Google Cloud project ID and duplicating all those services. But yeah, we'll be doing that in time, I think.
This is awesome. So thanks for sharing. And also, we're getting to the end of our conversation. It's been an awesome chat. So thank you very much for your time, Dan. So how do people learn about Ambrook if they want to reach out and get to know a little bit more about the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I love getting to share the amazing work that our engineering team is doing. Yeah, people that want to learn more should definitely check out ambrook.com/research, where we write about our company and the work that we're doing internally, as well as really interesting original research on the agriculture industry. And if interested in learning more about the company, they can check out ambrook.com/careers, and we're absolutely hiring. So yeah, definitely check that out. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Fillipo. Appreciate it.
Of course, it was our pleasure, Dan. We learned so much how Ambrook is innovating the ag space and providing this unique experience for farmers so they can focus on their main operations, which is to be in the field. And also, we loved how you're approaching your quick development and the way you're approaching your database usage and your CI/CD. If you enjoyed this video series, please make sure to click and subscribe so you can stay tuned to more episodes of Architecting Startups with Google Cloud.